Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, welcome to the show. And today we have with us so far Kurt of Uncivil Law, Ian of Runkle of the Bailey, and welcome back, Steve Gosney. It's been a minute.
Thank you. Good. Thank you for the invite. Thanks for being so persistent and allowing me my time away to come back, and good to be here, and we'll see how long we can go.
No, it's an honor to have you. I know you've shifted around, different jobs, different places, everything else. So
only one shift, but I'm in civil. I'm in civil law, not uncivil law. I'm in civil law now.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, both of the Steves have been had adventures this year because Steve Southern Law. Also, I managed to get a hold of him. He's just so snowed under with his current job that he hasn't been able to make it. Whoa, hello, David.
Oh, yes. Now, which microphone do we hear? Is it this one? Mic check 1, 2.
No, you're in the correct mic.
It's good. This is the good mic. Oh yeah. Okay, let's get going, people.
Okay, I'm a little weirded out now.
I'm right next to you, Ian. How you doing? I'm just going to reach over and pat you.
Yeah. All righty then.
Like being in an elevator with Trudeau.
Ooh. That adds the creep factor to 10. Okay, just before the show, it's been breaking that the Daniel Penny trial. I was wondering about it. I'm like, first off, I can't believe that the jury's been deliberating for 3 days, and now it appears that they may be hanging. Anybody have any information on that?
Yeah, just that they said that they were hung on the top count, and apparently undecided with respect to the lesser count. It sounds like the judge is giving an Allen charge on the whole thing and sending them back for deliberation. So, all things being equal, it looks like a hung verdict, but they might compromise and reach a verdict on the lesser count, I think, is also strongly possible.
What were the main count was second-degree manslaughter?
Something like that, yeah.
What were the lesser counts that they might be able? Yeah, manslaughter in the second degree. What are the lesser counts that they can get them on?
Probably some sort of kidnapping,
aggravated assault or something.
Yeah. From what I understand, Kurt, the article that I saw, the defense is saying no, make them decide on the top level charge, and the prosecution is trying to say no, let them go on and decide on the lower level charge. And I think the judge sided with the defense at this point, was going to do an Allen charge, as you said, on the top charge.
The lesser charge, put it in quotes, criminally negligent homicide, maximum punishment of 4 years in prison.
Oh, okay,
that makes sense. So it's a lesser included. So it's not really a second charge. It's a lesser included.
If this man sees anything of a day in jail or a finding of guilt, the world is broken. At least New York is broken.
We know that.
And apparently the lesson to men everywhere is don't help, don't intervene. And then, when people on Twitter say, where are all the men at? I can just say, you put them in jail.
No, exactly. Uncivil. In fact, that's one of the things that's really schizophrenic about our press, is that a couple of years ago, I remember there was a big press media hubbub about somebody was attacked in New York area in a group, and all these men stood around and did nothing to help, and everybody's lost. And then here's the counterexample, right? Here's a good Samaritan who's trying to assist, trying to go and like uncivil, there is actually a sexual dynamic here, a gender dynamic, in that men are, sheepdogs, and we want to have sheepdogs. If you remember, 9/11, and that the sheepdogs that brought that plane down in Pennsylvania protected somebody from a plane hit. And, the society depends on those people. And if we're going to criminalize that, and you're just going to get a bunch of passive sheep, it's a very bad societal message being sent by this prosecution.
Well, it's going back to Kitty Genovese, I believe, the bystander effect, and we're now essentially
badly misreported.
Okay, go on. Tell us about
it. People did call the cops. People did lean out and shout at this guy. The cops were like, nah, it's not a big deal. That one is not really and people were shouting at him from up in a building. There were a bunch of people who couldn't tell what was going on because they're looking and they're just like, I don't know what's happening. So it wasn't the whole notion of like a whole bunch of people who were fully aware of this and were just doing nothing was not true. There were people calling the police. There were people taking steps. It was just that ultimately it wasn't super helpful. One person did go looking for her, but at that point she'd already, she was basically already killed. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's not unusual for something that represents a concept to be untrue. That seems to happen quite a lot. But the bystander effect, I still think, is a legitimate
Well, assuming it wasn't
thing.
true, New York is making it more likely to become true because they're punishing people who might want to intervene. The safest thing is to just do nothing.
Mhm.
You know,
Oh, absolutely.
I'm under no obligation to do anything, and anything I do might put me in jeopardy. So, what is the most legally conservative advice that a lawyer would give? Just don't do anything, and then you're legally safe.
Can anybody explain to me the logic behind this prosecution? I mean, I'm completely with uncivil law on this. I think it's a terrible message and a terrible precedent, and I'm completely with the Daniel Penny defense. However, what is the best argument to prosecute this guy?
I hate to
Restorative justice and the mob.
let me just say this though. There were two other people who were holding the individual down, and they happen to be of a different race. So
Yes, that would be the restorative justice part of that equation.
yeah, the interesting problem is visually it looks like it's just racism against Daniel Penny. In my
Well, you can't be
opinion,
racist against white people, don't you know? That's the restorative justice part.
yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
You got everything
Yeah,
wrapped up into a nice little bow there.
Is there anybody here who wants to speak up for any argument that Penny should be prosecuted? This is another defense argument, I must say.
Eric Adams came out the other day and said
Yes.
that, basically defended Penny. It was a lynch mob knee-jerk reaction. If the jury has any common sense, it'll be not just a hung jury, but a outright acquittal. Otherwise, it's good. Nobody's gonna stand up to anything. Not that I would say like I wouldn't do it myself, and it's not a question of fear of going to jail unless I'm armed or something. I'm not getting into a chokehold with some nutcase on the subway unless it's the last resort, only for fear of getting stabbed to death myself. But this was only a response to the lynch mob that went on for a good week. AOC and all the other idiots coming out there and saying it's racist because the guy, just an aspiring Michael Jackson actor and not a habitual criminal offender with mental illness and whatever the problems. It was another George Floyd, and they got what they wanted, and they'll get what they deserve at the end of the day.
Yeah, the problem is that this guy's life, even if he gets exonerated, has been turned upside down, screwed over. I mean, this is a frameable version of no good deed goes unpunished.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was it? Somebody has a question here. Does anybody know this? New York's Good Samaritan law, or if they even have one?
No, I'll Google it real
Good
quick.
Samaritan laws only usually apply civilly, as far as I'm aware.
Oh, okay.
They apply a civil protection for people who intervene.
Okay, so now a question on that. Would this be an example of a Good Samaritan law? Somebody is choking and they're given a Heimlich maneuver really hard and it cracks a rib, and they sue the person for cracking the rib. Would that fall under the Good Samaritan?
That would be roughly the idea, yes. That there is an emergency, I facilitate the rescue, but in facilitating the rescue, I create problem, and therefore I'm not liable for the problem because I'm trying to solve a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
That's right. So they pointed out that the father sued civilly.
Yeah.
They just
Alberta's.
I'm sure he did. Of course he did.
I do. Yeah. If people, this is a little out of context, but I posted a video on SteveGosney.com, or I think it was one of YouTube and Rumble channels, and it's a lookup. It's called Redux. Solve the mystery of the missing truck. And there is about an 18-minute video if you want to help me with an actual real life case. I'm trying to identify a truck and a container. So if people, that's what he's saying. No, the answer is no. We haven't had a resolution. It may not be solvable. Not all mysteries are solvable. But I'm tapping into the wisdom of the internet to see if we can solve this, because there's a logo identified on the trailer of a semi truck, a partial logo that we can see through a camera, and I go through it. It's about an 18-minute video, so thank you for the super chat.
Okay, wow, that's some real crime and real
Real crime, real mystery, and real life. You know, and it'll be a big help, a huge help, if we could identify this truck.
Well,
Don't you work for the government now?
No, I do not. I work for civil law, Mr. on civil law.
Okay.
He's not a Fed.
Yes,
Folks,
we basically defend trucking companies.
That's good. All right.
Well, this is
against
a perfect,
the likes of the Morgans of the world, that sort of thing. You know?
Fair enough.
okay, this is a perfect shift then. While we're talking about identifying, we have a CEO who was shot down in New York, and they're looking to identify the individual who did that. And I know this is getting into Runkle territory here.
Runkle time.
And there are a few things being bandied about. One, there are people who are certain that they have identified the gun, and it is
they're wrong.
Rare. They claim a rare World War II bolt action
100%. Oh, well, sorry. It can't say 100%. 99% it's not. And if it is very badly broken. It's not a well rod. It's not a VP6. It's not it's just not.
It's a semi-automatic of some sort.
It's a semi-auto, and you can tell this from the video if you know how the well rod works, because you see the guy. I've got a plastic gun.
Just a heads up, if it matters to Hunley, Ian, our video from yesterday got demonetized and age restricted. So although we went into some
hand.
Sorry? If you play the clip, they hammer you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in fairness, I didn't even appeal it because, in fairness, we did go into some serious detail as to how firearms work. But
heaven forbid.
Well, I mean, that's allowed. I'm just trying to think. I don't have the plastic firearm. I've got an actual firearm here, but I can't show you.
Firing pin hits the primer.
I can't believe they haven't identified the guy yet. Intelligence knows who the guy is. I'm trying to find a video of the mask that you could, like this sort of like cloth mask you can put on that absolutely hides your face or makes you look like someone else because it'll blow your mind. But
I've seen that. Yeah. The video.
When he shoots, you see a puff of gas from the back of the gun, and you can't get that with a well rod unless the thing is so badly damaged that it's basically going to explode on you, because the well rod is a bolt action gun. You close the bolt and it seals it up, and so you can't have the puff of gases or smoke towards the back of it, because the gun is a closed system at the back. This is a semi-automatic firearm that is functioning improperly because he has not set up his suppressor properly. That's, the notion that it's a well rod is just not supportable by this video. And if it's, I've scared away Hunley, but if you've got a well rod that was leaking gases out the back, the thing would be like, that's a serious problem, right?
Is it also possible, Ian, that because we speculated about subsonic ammo, but I guess the ammo is not subsonic. But he could have also just limp wristed the gun and caused the not a full cycle.
I don't think it's a limp wristing situation because the guy is clearly proficient with firearms, but
even he's in a high stress environment, high stress situation.
He didn't look too stressed.
He's got two hands on it. He's gripping it fine. I don't think he's limp wristing that thing. I think that what he's doing there is that because for many firearms, when you attach a suppressor to the front of it, it will disrupt it unless the suppressor is fitted with a Nielsen device. And in this case, my bet is that it wasn't. And so you've got this guy, he shoots, and then he has to manually cycle it, and it's because his suppressor is improperly fitted. And
could there be other reasons?
Problem.
I watched a video with my friend Scott Rouse of the Behavior Panel, and he was talking about it. And he said that he was holding it backward with the support, and it could have been dragging on his hand, the support hand as well, when it was going back, not allowing a full thing. And the other guy stated if it's subsonic ammunition, it also might be a little bit weaker. And I don't know.
I think the bullets, the rounds that were recovered are not subsonic, though. So that kind of eliminates that idea.
Were they? Okay. Now, my last question is, could there have been a problem with the carving on the cartridge, could that have caused any kind of a hang up
No.
in the action of the weapon?
That's not going to do it. If that was going to cause a failure, it would be. I mean, I don't know how he wrote it on it, but he probably was just, if he was scratching it in, it would probably just be with, a key or something. But if he gouged it deeply enough, he would have had bigger problems. Like if that caused it to blow up in the gun or something, it wouldn't be a failure to cycle. It would be a massive jam. The thing is it's entirely possible to get a semi-automatic, suppressed handgun working just fine. The thing is he didn't. And this is a guy who clearly didn't do a dry run, didn't take it to the range. This guy, Mike, my read is he's got some firearm experience because you can see he clears the, he clears it proficiently, but he doesn't, he wasn't expecting this. He didn't,
he seemed to react calmly though. He seemed pretty damn calm though, considering, right in the middle of this act. I mean, it's a heinous act. I mean, the amount of stress, everything is going there. It kind of makes me think that it's happened before, even at the range. Like maybe he did test this ahead of time and he was ready to clear it pretty quickly. I mean, if
that was the case, he wouldn't be yard sailing rounds all over the place because he ejects 3 live rounds in the course of futzing with his gun. And you can see him. He's frustrated. He's like, he futzes with the gun. He racks the action repeatedly.
Hold on.
Isn't the point of this discussion,
he's leaving rounds all over the place.
Well, the point of, the question is, why do we care? Why is this important? I think it's important because there's speculation of some kind of professional mob hit. I think it's instead an amateur who has planned very carefully and added, he's somewhat proficient with guns, but, targeted this guy. I don't know. It doesn't feel to me like a super sophisticated, government operation, more of a private operation. I mean, that's what the point of what we're trying to say is everybody's trying to make out of some kind of super sophisticated mob hit or something.
This is a guy with a grudge.
Apparently, I don't know. I mean, one of the questions was, especially when we didn't know who it was or, how to identify.
Well, and I'll say the ID, they've posted this picture of this person around. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little skeptical because it's not the same clothing, and I'm not certain that the person that they have circulated is the same person. They've got some better face shots, and at first I was like, oh, that's great, this one's solved because they've got some really good shots. But then somebody I saw on the internet and Twitter, I think it was, did a side by side, and they said, I don't think this is the same person. And I don't know if that was Runkle or if it was Nick Starro, but somebody did that, and I was like, you know what? The first impressions is pretty good. So I'm not certain that they have the right guy on their picture yet.
This is the mask that David was talking about.
Yeah, and I'm finding I'm finding the pictures. There's a video here where someone's saying this is the weapon that was used to kill him.
Yeah,
BT
that's
Station
what you're
6.
talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's if you watch the video, we won't show it. It's clearly not first of all, it wouldn't explain the live rounds on the ground. Unless he laid those out himself to send a message or whatever. And it's not, the action is not even what we saw in the video by any means, albeit it was dark. But yeah, bring up that mask thing. It'll terrify you. I thought it was AI, like there's a America's Got Talent video that goes around where the people turn into an animal. This is not AI. This is now there's a woman at a that's indistinguishable on a especially. It's solid. This is the same stuff that the CIA has been using for decades.
This
is like Johnny Everyday out of A Scanner Darkly.
Uh-huh.
Was it Johnny Everyday? I think it was Johnny Everyday. Then you go to the picture where people are saying it's not the same picture. I'll see if I can pull up. I know Pasobik tweeted it. I'm not jumping on that. I think it is the same person. You sharpen an image a little bit. You change the lighting and the hue.
Different color filters can make
different. Yeah, I mean, and the pictures.
The jacket's different. The jacket, you got pockets on one, no pockets on the other. Now you can change clothes easily, but just the fact that the side's got a jacket and a hoodie, it's cold out. And it's a different jacket. Now I understand you can change it, but then even the face looks different.
I think it was two different times. I think it was
there were two different times. I didn't see one with two different jackets. Let me see if I can find the pictures. I didn't see two different jackets.
It's a different jacket.
Hold on. Let me, if you can find that, Steve. I'm curious because the one I saw.
I think I shared it.
Pull up one that where we can see if it's a different jacket. I didn't think that here. Okay, here we go. No, that's okay. That's one.
There's one with a guy like who's smiling. He's got a big smile on his face. That's the one.
And he's wearing, it's a jacket with 2 pockets, little white strings, and the one that the other one, it looked like the same jacket. The backpack is different. There's no question about that.
See, these right here are the same jacket.
Yeah, that's the same.
The backpack
that's
is
the
different,
same place. But look
And
at
it's a very distinctive
one
backpack.
The backpack is different. There's no question about it. The other one had a white strap and a white. You don't see my cursor. It had a white strap and a whitish. But now that I don't know. That looks like it's before and not after, because that was allegedly at the hotel where he took his mask down because he was flirting allegedly with.
Well, they made him take it down, supposedly. I saw somebody saying that whoever was checking him in had him pull his mask down. I think to check ID or something, but it's a fake ID.
Yeah, if the backpack is the only thing that's different, then it's easily explainable. He might have left that somewhere else or dumped it.
But compare this with the other image, the image of the actual shooter, because we're comparing.
Well, grab the image of the actual shooter.
Do you even have that? I mean, I don't have that handy. I know of the light backpack with the alleged shooter, but I don't have anything on hand. If you guys want to track it down, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're just going to be throwing images out there at random, because
I mean,
it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, it is incredibly dangerous when you put something like that out there. Somebody might decide to take justice in their own hands, things like that. I think you've got to be really careful when you just put out pictures of people. Even sharing that picture, I just said this is a picture, is released of that. I don't believe that would be the operation that they'd be playing either. But it's funny now. I can't see the picture of the guy. I only got the side-by-side comparison. Here we go. I think we go. Okay, we got all 3 right here. Here, I'll give this in the. I finally, by the way, everybody, I got the new computer, which is why I had to back out to sign back into things. And I'm still, the keyboard's different and my fat fingers are not adjusting properly. How do I get into the private chat? People? Here, okay. Yeah.
Here it is. Look, so CNN has the picture of the shooter.
Pull this one up. This one's got all 3.
Okay, good.
Because I don't think they're doing that. They're not throwing off the public by potentially unleashing vigilante justice against somebody who's innocent if they know it. And so it's the guy here. This is the comparison.
Okay, so you've got that shot, and that shot.
Okay, go back. So now the 2 black pockets. I don't think that
this one doesn't have pockets.
I don't. Well, I'm not sure that I
don't think it has
a jacket. It's a different jacket.
It might be just a very poor video. It's hard
That's
to
the thing.
tell.
It looks like a screen grab from a video. Go back.
Some
go back
poor video tends to smooth things like that out, but
That's
it's hard
true.
to to tell.
It's got a hood, and just look for the little strap, the little shoelaces things.
No.
Might be tucked in.
I don't know if that's the same jacket.
Go back. Okay, and then
the backpack's definitely different.
Backpack's definitely different. This one zips all the way down, and this one does not zip all the way down. That almost looks like a windbreaker pullover.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Okay.
What it is, and if it's at 2 different days, like if it was cooler or in the cold, warmer or colder, I mean, even the backpack could be different. If
you have to presume that they're tracing it based on the use of what I believe was the use of his credit card. So, it's not possible that this is either an accident or deliberate. I mean, it can only be if it's not the same person. It can only be an accident, which is not something Crime Stoppers would do. Nor is it deliberate to throw people off of what exactly, unless this guy's.
No, but you're assuming people make mistakes. Even in law enforcement, make mistakes. I'm just not convinced. I mean, clearly we know who the shooter. The shooter looks. You've got a visual of him. The guy can change his jacket, so that's not necessarily determinative. So you really need to know the context of how they're IDing this person before I'm jumping to conclusions saying that guy is the same guy, because he's clearly wearing a different jacket to me.
No, but you're not jumping to that conclusion. They've already made that conclusion, and I don't think they'd be releasing these pictures unless they've identified him as a person of interest, and maybe he's friends with. Who knows? But
this guy right here in the super chat is Al Gonzalez. He's a former New York City cop. He worked in the intelligence division, so he's got some good sources.
Is Al on Twitter?
He might be. I don't know. But Al saying that hearing from sources, the ammo may be 380 ACP, which is 9mm short, and suspect no longer in New York City and may have caught flight out of country that day. So that would imply a higher level, Ian, wouldn't it? If that's all true, what he just stated.
Maybe. I mean, what I've seen reported is that they found, standard 9mm rounds. So
yeah,
this contradicts the sort of official reports. So maybe, but
what is a 380 ACP, Ian?
It's just a different cartridge, but a lot of the cartridges have the same diameter, and so that's what they're referring to there.
Mhm.
But
It's
when you're talking about
9mm,
9mm, you're usually referring to 9mm, Luger, which
Not
is what
380 is basically a cut 9mm. It's
Yeah, it's
a
9
little
by 17
lower
as opposed to
power.
9 by 19, right?
It's a little bit lower power. I didn't hear what you said.
Isn't it 9 by 17 as opposed to 9 by 19?
roughly. Yeah,
yeah.
just a little shorter.
Oh, Sean snuck in. Hey, Sean.
Hello.
And I mean, here's
And
the
it
other
doesn't
thing.
really change much to what he did or didn't do. I mean, the odds of having a reliable 380 pistol running a suppressor on it, I mean, the more likely thing is like, what are the most available handguns out there? 9mm handgun, easier way to get a suppressor for a 9mm and trying to run it that way. I mean, that just makes the most sense.
Well, and also this is early on, so their assessment of what cartridge this isn't going to be by sending it to a firearms expert. It's going to be somebody picking it up and reading the head stamp.
Yeah,
And the head stamp isn't going to say 380 on it. It's going to say 9mm on it, because we're talking 9mm Luger. I don't think this is correct.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it probably is 9mm at the end of the day. That's just, the most obvious answer for that. It kind of goes back to what Runkle was saying with like using a well rod or the, veterinary pistol. Like that'd be a very esoteric way of doing it. And part of doing these things is making sure you can disappear, or like anybody could have done it as part of a defense and part of way to hide. You don't want to do it so you're so specifically identified.
Well, wouldn't they? Yeah, I mean, typically, and the other people are saying this too. Wouldn't they typically use like a 22 revolver if possible, which would, leave no cartridges, and just literally pop up, walk up and pop them.
I mean,
and go.
You run into issues of like, can you suppress a 22 and suppressing the revolver like that? I mean, yeah, maybe like if you're watching Casino, like Joe Pesci walks up to that lady and like just shoots her in the head a bunch of times. Sure, but
you only need one time.
Wasn't that Goodfellas, or is that Casino?
The thing is tons of people survive being shot with a 22.
And that's the thing. Like, it's one, like from the distance this guy was doing it. Yeah, if he had like been cool about it and walked up right behind him and closed the distance and went like right to the back of his head, sure, that could have done it.
Well, that was Scott Rouse's claim that it was an amateur hour because the guy didn't just do the contact.
Well, but you can't. I heard someone else with that analysis as well. And if this guy's trying to get away and get into a different set of clothing, he doesn't want, I would imagine, human matter on him. And so keeping a distance would make it easier, I would assume, to make a clean getaway.
Well, most of that human matter is going to go at the front end of the head away from him. But like the things the guy did, like he attacked while there's somebody standing right there in front of him. Yeah. He attacked in the well-lit part, where if he had waited another 5 to 10 steps, he would have attacked when it's darker. It would have been a little easier to walk through and get away. It doesn't look like the guy's wearing gloves. Apparently they found a fingerprint on one of the water bottles he had. Like, it's one thing to leave a shell casing, which, by the way, chat, can leave fingerprints on shell casings. I'm not telling you how to not commit a crime. I'm just telling you, make sure you wipe down your gear. But he like left a water bottle, and it sounds like they, in addition to a fingerprint, they might have DNA now, and it doesn't look like the guy was wearing gloves. A lot of this screams, this is
amateur hour.
Yeah, this is bad television. Like Boondock Saints, bad television is responsible for this.
Well, okay.
Like,
I want to
everybody
get
wants
into
this to be some super like
Yeah.
sexy professional hit, and it's not. It's a guy with a grudge.
Are you
Yeah.
sure? Are you sure? And I asked that because, like, number one, please define professional. Like you even in your video, I think you point out state actors are a high level of professionalism when you get into special forces training like that, right? Most people who are quote professionals are people that are willing to take money to take somebody else out.
Most of the guys who
Yeah.
take money to do something are not like this whole notion of like special skill. Sure, he could be somebody hired, in which case you'd expect a meth addict to just walk up and like open out of like, or to just open up out of a car window or something like that. This is not that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there just isn't a pool of very skilled people available for assassinations. You
Right,
know,
and this
because
guy's not
It's
very
hard to
skilled.
find good assassins these
You
days.
pointed that out, actually, that this guy is
We've
not
looked.
very
We've
skilled.
looked hard.
I mean, the thing is there isn't, for the average person, you just can't hire a hitman very easily at all.
Mm-hmm.
You're because
Right.
the person
Yeah.
who responds to your ad is a cop, 100%.
And
And
The last
This-
3
yes.
hitmen I hired all fell through. It's very
Yes.
sad.
no,
Well,
and
I-
you
I
can't
find
report
it,
him to the BBB.
And
But
you know what?
no,
I wonder, actually, you bring that up about hiring hit people, right?
Mhm.
I think that's somewhat true, but then Steve Gosney, Sean, you guys can confirm this or not. If you happen to say be connected with any gangs or anything like that,
Mhm.
it
and the
can
gangs
be.
use meth addicts. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Right.
They
Well, I'm
use
talking
average
about
people.
Venezuelan gangs, for example. Are they meth addicts that are doing that? No, I'm saying you've got a whole bunch of.
You mean like
really-
true organized crime?
Yeah, you've got
Yeah.
some pretty
Well, I mean-
tough characters. They're all in New York, by the way, right now.
Yeah,
They're
but-
in hotels. That's
but you-
possible.
And those guys aren't writing things on their casings. They're not like this.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Everything about this
Mhm.
screams dude with a grudge doing it
Or-
himself.
Or because the police are investigating the family right now,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
it's supposed to scream dude with a grudge.
Yeah, but
I mean, let's be honest. If especially when you're talking about this, Elephant, good points, that he dumped all that stock. This guy was under investigation, apparently,
Mhm.
along with a couple others from some major stock manipulation. His wife was saying, "Oh, he's been getting death threats." It's like, well, okay, that's interesting. You're saying that now. You guys are separated. She's in another state. Is it uncommon for that to happen? So I don't know.
What was the most recent case of the woman who did that to her husband? He got out of his car on a dark road for some reason because there was some blockade in the middle of the road, and then he got popped, and it turns out that it was his ex-wife doing it. If the guy got on a plane and like it's tough to see what he looked like if he looks like Eastern European, but if he got on a plane and he's out, there's a number of the relevant unanswered questions are what was Thompson going to say in his address to the shareholders, and you know what could be some more deeper pharmaceutical, because a disgruntled employee or someone who was denied coverage or a family member going out there, you would expect.
Where he was? How do you know where he was? How do you know he's going to be alone? There's a lot of it's kind of weird. He's just walking around.
I mean, how do you know where he was? It's because they published that information, right?
Yeah.
You can just Google the
He
guy.
might have
shareholder.
speaking he's got engagements, or when you're the CEO of a company, you can be tracked a little easier than like me or Steve or Viva. Like, nobody cares where we're going.
Now,
but
there's
I
another
think
angle.
I just wanted to say, like,
Everyone
based
cares
on
where
like what's-
Viva's going. Trust me.
based on like the cartridge, it was written on the casings and everything. I think this is going to be some sort of nutter who's got like a schizophrenic political, like he's going to be like some crazy far left, like just political schizophrenic things, and you went after a CEO. I just the idea of this, like you're trying to make it look like a random hit. Like if we're talking about Seth Rich, like you would then stage it to make it look like a robbery, or you do something like that. Just walking up and dusting the guy and then disappearing.
Maybe he's a degenerate gambler, and it was a bad collection.
Steve, what
Yeah.
were you saying a minute ago?
Well, that brings up the next point, which is interesting, and that is the reaction of what we consider to be like normal people.
Oh, well,
That
like
on
Taylor
Twitter,
Lorenz.
the reaction to this has been, well, gee, executives like this need to be killed. I mean, there's been there's a lot of people that are.
Steve, how would you feel if somebody shot George Soros in the head tomorrow?
Right. Yeah. Well, but there's sort of this category
in Minecraft.
George Soros is more overtly political. So you expect that people who are political are going to engender greater animus.
If you rank people in terms of their of their likability, this is the guy lawyers point to say we're actually really cuddly and we're really like everybody loves us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. People are not super upset.
People are posting
one of the most hated groups on the planet.
Specifically, this guy and this company has a lot of baggage. People are like posting one person posted a thing of being turned down for his daughter's wheelchair and other things. So apparently he's notoriously a penny pincher, if you will. Yeah.
You say he. And he's the CEO of a company. The company is someone gets denied by the company. Who do they think they want to go after? You don't go after your CFO. You don't go after maybe your COO. So you find the CEO who you think is the president of the company. Or it could be look at the Department of Justice investigation, which would reveal that he was either insider trading or selling his stocks before he knew bad information was coming down. You could get institutional investors who are pissed. Then if you want to draw the COVID angle to this, he might have, had a turn of heart and was going to reveal some information about stats as relates to the nature of claims, which might reveal some unpleasant truths that Albert Bourla might.
Or he could be flipping on his partners in a stock market scandal, for all we know, and that would give motivation to have him no longer cooperate with feds or whatever he may or may not be doing. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities.
The bottom, when you look at that video, I see a lot more of, it's not Luc Besson in the professional level, but I see a lot more of Luc Besson than, trying to think of like a gangster movie where they just, come and unleash on the house. It was definitely, the dude was calm, cool, and collected, even under the misfiring stress of the thing. He didn't look particularly emotional. And if it turns out that he had like a getaway flight already booked, it's a slightly more organized than just a disgruntled individual.
Show me. We don't have any confirmation on a getaway flight at all. Like
it was Fox was reporting it that he might have already fled the country.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. He might have also turned into a unicorn. I don't know. Like, do we actually have some confirmation on this, or
I don't know.
Like, there's so much bad information here.
I was like, when I covered this last night, they admit, the police had claimed they had a person they were tracking. They claimed this guy. They already knew this person. One of the people they're looking at came in on a bus.
Yes, the Greyhound bus. I remember that.
Yeah, they already know who they're looking at. Like, if you're already to that point, your OPSEC is blown. You're like pros come in and out. You don't know who they are. They're there like a ghost. So that's the other thing here. Like you're in and out, and nobody.
Well, there's also, there's a continuum of capability and competence. So there's from the meth head, crack addict, street level jerk, all the way to the professional government thing. There's a whole continuum here. So
exactly.
Somewhere in between those 2 points. And so these are all speculations. And I think that one of the things that prosecutors, police, and the public needs to be reticent about is that to let the facts drive the theory rather than projecting a theory and forcing the facts into a theory that we have a preconception.
Unless you're on YouTube, and that's our job.
Which we have that license. But I'm saying that the theory, you see this prosecutors, police do this, news media, everybody does it. We're speculating based on the facts that we have, but those facts could change, and we really don't have all the facts. And so it could be a professional hit. It could be a disgruntled guy. It could be a lot of things. Obviously, there was some planning. But I'm just saying that projecting onto the killer some because of this, therefore, it projects a perfection when in fact this person is just as incompetent as everybody else.
By the way, Al, the New York cop just pointed out, and this is true, this is very good for security businesses in New York right now. Their phones are ringing off the hook. Hey, you got anybody available?
The hit.
I don't know. I mean, that's always a question. Who benefits? But
well,
that would be.
I mean,
You think
I don't
this
think
is
a
the most
security
guerrilla marketing campaign ever.
But speaking of misinformation and disinformation, I see Good Lawgic has entered the chat, who spread the egregious disinformation of the convicted felon, Joe. How the hell dare you? But your mea culpa, Joe.
Nate's going to be getting in here soon.
Yeah, no, I'm just. I was totally.
We gotta
joking
wait
because,
for Nate
Joe,
for this
I think
one.
your mea culpa was absolutely unnecessary because I don't think you did anything wrong or were incorrect in any meaningful legal sense.
Whoa.
Although
In case
wait, we're accusing him
you
of
guys were gonna ask me where I
misinformation for
was Wednesday.
apologizing.
his apology was misinformation.
my apology was
He was not sorry, folks.
my apology. Those of you who are confused what Viva's referencing, so I've been banging the drum for 6 months now that Trump is not a convicted felon, and that he will not be a convicted felon until such time as he's convicted by the judge, and that a verdict is not a conviction. And in federal court, that actually is true. And that's how there were a lot of lawyers who joined on board with me, and I was really screaming about it. I even found some statutes under the New York criminal procedural law which helps support that notion. For example,
question: how about Florida, Steve? And I want to ask this deliberately, Joe, because I think different states. I think Phil Holloway also thought the same thing as you, and it could be a case that some states do it, some states don't. So, like in Florida, Steve, if a person is convicted but they have not been sentenced, like the sentence is a couple of weeks, are they technically a convicted felon before they are sentenced?
I believe no. I mean, I think that it requires the judge to adjudicate the person guilty before the and that would be part of the sentence before the person is quote a convicted felon. There's post jury motions. There's post. Now, most of the time, most criminal cases, the way they evolve is once the person's convicted, there's an immediate sentencing, and so they're adjudicated and they're convicted and they're sent off. But sometimes in a complex case, they're not. They can be held over and retained. But I think that that is an interesting little point about that, about when does the person become a, quote, convicted felon? And is that a term of art that has meaning? The question is when do you lose your rights? For example, when do you lose your gun rights or your voting rights or whatever, your right to freedom? Well, your freedom rights get disposed of or taken away by the court when you are actually sentenced. Now, you can be remanded pre-sentencing, but for example, what if, for example, there's a post-conviction motion, the judge says, you know what, I'm going to do away with the jury verdict and say you're not guilty. That can happen in a post-judgment, post-trial thing, in which case the person never lost their rights to vote, never lost their right to a firearm or their freedoms. So we're playing with a technical term. I think in Florida, I would answer in Florida, it's when you are actually adjudicated by the judge, which may or may not occur directly after the jury finds it's going to. Just because the jury comes in does not mean, we're trying to take some kind of definition and slap it on this to say, aha, make a political point, which is, it's a little bit of a leap. So
it was in the Michael Flynn case with Rafikian, where the judge overturned the jury finding of guilt. So
that was federal.
Yeah, that's federal. That's part of the
true.
problem.
All
it's a huge part of the problem.
No, it's a distinction without it. At the end of the day, it's immaterial difference because he was convicted, found liable. Big deal. Joe's apology, though totally transparent, I think was totally unnecessary. So shame on you, Joe, for apologizing.
Hold on, I'm going to push back. It's not a distinction without a difference because you do have two cases. You have Hunter Biden, who is not a felon, and you have Donald Trump, who technically is a felon.
Which ironically, because it was federal court, Hunter Biden is a felon. Because under federal law.
He wouldn't because he was never sentenced in either case.
He was never sentenced.
Exactly.
No, that's the. Oh, you're right. Yeah, right.
It's the opposite.
Right, exactly.
And see, here's the problem. See, Trump never lost his voting rights. He voted in Florida after the jury came back. So clearly, he had not lost his rights related
in the eyes of Florida. In the eyes of Florida.
In Florida.
And that's because in New York, there's conditions that allow for that. I don't remember what that is, but there was articles on that because I've been talking to Nate in the background. Because that was very confusing to me too. It's like, well, how the hell did he vote? Whatever. Apparently, there are like certain provisions to where he could vote, but he still can't. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I think the reason why is because by Florida standards, he's not convicted. So
that's probably right.
So that's probably
Florida
why.
probably doesn't recognize it because when I was looking at it online briefly, when we were looking at the New York rules, it seemed to the way I was reading it seemed to imply the verdict counted as being convicted because it referred to the sentencing as being apart from the conviction. Referred to there was other definitions that seemed to say the verdict. So the verdict itself, once it's entered, is considered to be convicted, even though there's no judgment of conviction yet. Which seemed odd to me, but that was the way the New York.
Well,
rules
Nate
were
found a
written.
case. Nate actually found a case that went to the New York Supreme Court, I believe.
So I was sparring online politely, saying, Nate, I love you. You're just wrong here. And where he was taking the position that he is considered convicted, and he was pointing to the definitions that Kurt is referencing right now. And I was saying, if you look at New York Criminal Procedure Law 330.30, which is the procedure for someone who's post guilt verdict, and at that stage they refer to them as having an anticipatory, a prospective judgment of conviction. Mm-hmm. So I was like, why would you call that prospective judgment of conviction if he's already convicted by dint of having a verdict against him? It must be that he's not considered a convict under New York law. To me, this is common sense interpretation of the statute. Now, and I went back and forth. I spent an hour offline. I went to Nate's StreamYard, and the two of us were having a lengthy discussion about different languages and different statutes and how it is best understood. By the time I was done, he was completely convinced I was right. He was like, you're right. The read here makes a lot more sense. In fact, the section that you're referencing is section New York Criminal Procedure 1.20 subsection 13, which defines conviction. If you pull that up, if you could pull it up there, 1.20 subsection 13, you will see a definition of conviction. But the definition of conviction there, what's weird about it is it says this is the definition of conviction when you don't have an instrument that's alleging a complaint of felony, which to me says that's a conviction for a misdemeanor. And in that situation, it says if you have a jury verdict, that's considered that when there's entry of a jury of a guilty plea or a jury verdict, in that case, you have in a an instrument of complaint that's not for a felony, that's conviction. And the argument that I was making to Nate, which he thought made a lot of sense,
upon an accusatory instrument other than a felony complaint.
Other than a felony complaint, which means if it's a felony complaint, then a jury verdict, that would imply to me that if it's a jury complaint, you're not. That's not enough to be conviction. You need to have an actual judge slamming the gavel. I'm fine. I hereby agree with the jury, or I'm accepting your plea of guilty. Boom. That's what makes it into a conviction. And he was actually on board with me. And then he's like, let me just see if there's any case law on this. And he found this case of People versus Montilla. And in that case, the New York Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in the state, they're the last word. They're like the Supreme Court of the United States, but for the state of New York. They say, we look at this 1.20 subsection 13, and we read this as saying that this is considered conviction as soon as there's a verdict of guilty. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you read it that way? That makes no sense. And in that context, because sometimes it does have ramifications. For example,
the appropriate meme here is the two guys in the gallows with the one guy going first time.
So and in that case of People versus Montilla, there's a heightened felony charge when they were talking about someone brandishing a weapon. And if you have a prior conviction, in that case, it's a higher level felony to brandish a weapon after you already have a conviction. Well, Montilla, in this situation, Montilla is that he had pled guilty, and then after he had pled guilty, there was still not a sentence. Then during that phase, which is the phase that essentially Trump is in right now, it's just not a plea of guilty, it's a jury verdict, but it's legally the same thing. So during that phase, he was busted for brandishing a weapon, and the state charged him as if he was convicted. And he's like, I'm not convicted. And that went all the way up to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals looked at that 1.20 subsection 13 and said, no, we read this to say that you are convicted. Now, I think that the reading makes absolutely no sense at all. But the bottom line,
court in New York, so they can't
exactly. The bottom line is that is the law in New York. What my opinions on it, or if their opinion is idiotic, and I'm not saying it's idiotic, I disagree with it. but they are the final say. So for someone to now go out and say that he's considered New York to be, I'm almost done here, for him to say that, he's a convict, that's technically accurate. You can't complain that's not accurate. And what I felt, the reason I came out and made the public statement is because I've seen online people clipping me and refuting those who are calling a convict and say, see, here's a New York lawyer saying he's not a convict. And I'm like, if people are quoting me, and I understand why they are, because I've been screaming, he's like, not a convict, not a convict. So if people are quoting me, I really need to correct them that technically under
You're not
the
the
law
only
New York.
Joe, by the way. I think Megyn Kelly has stated that. I believe Phil Holloway is, I think other lawyers have thought the same thing. So it's.
I'm not embarrassed that.
I always thought that
philosophically
until there was a judgment that you couldn't be considered convicted. That's what I always thought.
But Eric,
So I was in the first instance with Joe. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. But if the highest court in New York says I'm wrong, who am I to disagree?
I'm sure. I even think Barnes also agreed. I knew that I never took an opinion away because I didn't understand the distinction. But for me, it never made a flipping difference. Okay, he's a convicted felon in an absolutely politically prejudiced court system. Enjoy your convicted felon, you dumbasses. It was like such a distinction without a difference, except as relates to how you can exercise your federal rights. So,
but
right.
I hear
Biden should be a troll and pardon him.
Yeah, I wouldn't accept it. I would not accept if I were him. And it seems as if accepting the pardon is part of the process, which I was thinking, why is that part of the process? Why do you have to accept the pardon in order for that to be part of the process?
Because the idea of the pardon is you deserve to get your federal rights back, and that you have to acknowledge the wrongdoing of it. Pardon
I'll
is not
accept a blanket pardon. I just want to put that on the record.
Acknowledge the wrongdoing. You don't have to acknowledge a pardon. You don't have to acknowledge the wrongdoing. You can say, I meant to do it. To hell with him. I'll do it again.
No, but you have to acknowledge. You have to acknowledge having done it. Is the point?
No, you don't.
You
don't.
You just say, "Okay, I'm taking a pardon."
Yeah, they
could pardon me for
society.
The
now
assassination
society
of Lincoln.
Presumes you're guilty. That's a different thing than
they can presume anything they want. I'll take that blanket pardon. You want to write me one? That's fine.
Yeah, Nixon never said he was guilty.
Pardon, and I'd also like it to extend out for like the next couple of years.
Give me a couple days. Give me a couple days notice.
So
the judge speculated.
I'm going to commit so many ITAR violations.
With the Biden pardon, the judge was speculating that because the pardon ran through December 1st, was issued on December 1st and ran entirely through December 1st, that could be a technical issue with the pardon because you cannot pardon someone for things that may happen in the future, and technically the pardon would have governed anything that he would have done later that day prior to midnight.
So. Even if it doesn't cover the new crimes, which I think is true, I think you would construe it as just not applying.
Well, that's how the judge. That's how the judge decided to apply. That's how the judge decided to apply. The judge was very angry. He was very angry at Biden because for Biden basically saying, this whole system is politically weaponized against my son, which was hilarious because that opened up the doorway now for Trump's lawyers to come out there and say Biden admitted that his own DOJ is politically weaponized. So, and then he sent people from the DOJ to come after him here in New York. So that's part of the reason that you need to dismiss this. Also, by the way, Jack Smith, the other point Todd Blanche, future Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, said was that Jack Smith, when he withdrew his action in Washington and Florida, he said, well, our interpretation of the law is that President-elect, you cannot prosecute him, and that's why we're withdrawing it. So he's running away to Colombia or some out of some non-extradition country, Jack Smith, and he wanted those cases withdrawn as fast as possible and get those shredding machines going. Because if the case is ongoing, you have to maintain the documents, and that's one of the reasons people are speculating that he was like, "Chuck him, please move on it fast, get rid of this case," which was kind of funny, but.
It is correct. I was under I was wrong in that it doesn't require an admission or recognition. Difference between a pardon and a commutation, however, but it would also make sense because if you can pardon someone for crimes that they haven't even yet committed, that would be tough to accept.
You don't even have to.
Viva. A lot of lay people think
you can have a pardon for like a period of time. Like I don't even have to know what the crime is. Neither does the person who's pardoning me, incidentally. So it's like, how can it be an admission? Because I don't even necessarily know what the crimes I'm being pardoned from necessarily are.
Well, Nixon never said I was guilty of anything. I think it's a great example. He got the pardon for anything.
Though, the big question, and all of this is interesting and esoteric, but the big $1 million question, $1 billion question, is whether or not the federal pardon extends to state court convictions.
It won't.
It does not.
No.
I don't see how
Yeah.
it would.
I think that there was a question of that. If the state charges are related to a federal law, would that overlap
What
come into
about
play?
federal
Somebody was talking.
supremacy?
Okay, so when someone gets an immunity deal from a district attorney, that doesn't cover them federally. If you get it from a
No, but
U.S.
that's the
attorney,
other way. That's the other way
doesn't-
around.
If you get it from a U.S. attorney, that doesn't cover you state. In fact, from a U.S. attorney, what I saw in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial was that if you get an immunity deal, Jeffrey Epstein worked an immunity deal for Ghislaine Maxwell, and what the court said in that situation blew my mind was that the immunity only covers the southern. You're only immune in the Southern District of Florida. You're not immune in New York. So even though it's the United States of America that's issuing this
That can
immunity,
happen.
that
Well,
you basically need every federal courthouse, every district attorney's office to grant you immunity if you really want to.
That doesn't make sense, because I thought the case was U.S. versus that person.
I thought it was a
New York
state level, the Florida stuff.
I don't know. Look, I don't know if they could do it in the Western District of Florida. I don't know how many districts there are in Florida. We have 4 here, but there are 3. Yeah, well, I'll tell you that I don't know if you could prosecute someone in other districts, but they were Judge Nathan cited several cases, and she was a very sharp cookie up here in the 2nd district. Several cases, and she was never overturned, saying, "Hey, look, you can an immunity deal from Florida has no effect on the district attorney
That's state to federal. I'm talking federal.
No. It's federal to federal.
But Steve,
federal to federal.
The state of New York literally charged Steve Bannon for the build the wall fraud that he got a federal pardon for. So I mean, obviously,
I understand this. I'm saying whether that's good law, whether that should be the case.
Why would it not be the case? I'll ask you this:
because we are atomizing political disputes into very unfriendly districts to weaponize the state courts against political enemies. Federal supremacy seems to me, we fought a civil war over this, you remember, to provide for federal jurisdiction for pardon power over state crimes. I'm just making an argument that this is a very disruptive, and the fact that a state prosecutor can charge political enemies across the country in kangaroo courts is destabilizing to the republic.
Okay, I 100% agree with you on that. But
let's step back and let's say it's not political. Let's say it's something like homicide, which is typically a state charge. Should they be federally pardoned for killing somebody in a state?
Would the feds?
I want to go to the extreme.
But I mean, yeah, but getting a federal pardon is extremely difficult.
I understand.
That's not the point. Is if this is your area of domain, is just over the federal government and how they're operating, and to some degree, I guess, impacting the federal courts. You have to ask yourself, from where is the jurisdiction coming for a president to impute himself into local state law? Like, on what basis would he have any authority?
Well, federal supremacy. Federal supremacy.
But there's
dual
sovereignty.
The federal supremacy
I
only really
understand
is
dual
sovereignty.
Look, I'm not saying it's
interesting.
the way it is. I'm saying it's the problem that is being pushed by Soros prosecutors. Let's use that as a saying. They have found a weakness within our overall system, and that is they can find a kangaroo court, a Soros prosecutor with a friendly New York City jury to prosecute political enemies and get convictions and put people in prison, when in fact it is simply so you've got little jurisdictions controlling the whole country's politics. We're putting prosecutors in charge of our political system.
That's kind of like patent trolls,
answer,
right?
Your answer to that is give them more power. Though.
Yeah.
I don't think
My answer, that's not my answer.
Your answer is give the federal government, give the president.
Yeah, I don't want the
power,
president
I
to
don't know.
become like a
Your
super
remedy,
governor.
he's saying your remedy is worse. What's a better remedy is to basically make it crystal clear that district attorney can never charge the president of the United States for a crime, and that is outside of their jurisdiction. To me, that's a far more logical take, because how the heck is any president supposed to govern?
It's a shield, not a weapon, though. And
Well, let me just finish my point. How can any president actually govern if they have to be subjected to the laws in all 50 states and some whack district attorney who's going to wake up and say, this impacted me and now I'm coming after you personally. That seems ridiculous, especially when you consider the conflicts between different states and that he might be in violation, no matter which way he goes, he could be in violation of state law. It seems insane that Fani Willis has a right to charge him for things he was doing. And that's kind of sort of what the Supreme Court was saying when in US v. Trump when they granted immunity, which is that like anything that's anywhere in the ambit, they set down their 3 rules, and they basically said if it's constitutionally part of his charge to handle those duties, then you can't even question him about it. It can't have anything to do with anything. If it's something that's in the ambit of his presidential duties, not directly charged, like enforcing voting laws, that's not his constitutional duty, but it's part of the whole orbit of what presidents do. In that case, there's a presumption in his favor. But if it's something that's really personal, in that case, you can ask him. So, and to a degree, I think that helps shield and stop district attorneys like Fani Willis from coming after him and saying, hey, we're, unless it's something that's completely individualized to him taking care of his personal needs, that they would sort of be in the dark. So I think to a large degree, the Supreme Court has already remedied this. But I'm wondering, you guys agree that that's much less of a problem now? I
want to give Steve the last word. I think he has to leave because he's actually practicing law on lunch break. So I want to give him a chance to.
Jobs, come on, Steve.
Well, no, I fully understand, and I've litigated this very issue, wherein we had a state prosecution, a 20-year conviction. And then after the 20 years, the person came back and the state charged the person for the exact same crime and was convicted and got another 10 years on top of it. And I argued this very thing before the appellate court. Okay, so I'm not saying that I don't understand separate sovereigns and all that. I'm saying that there is a weakness within our federal system and within our government right now in our republic. And it is being exploited by people to destroy political enemies through the use of unchecked prosecutorial power, and they're going after not only Trump but everybody surrounding him, the lawyers that represent him, the people that populate his cabinet, anybody who supports him, people that donate to his campaign. The Gibson CEO for the Gibson Guitar Factory, if you remember, they went and they took all the wood because it was from they're all this bureaucratic deep state is being weaponized against people. And I think that the pardon power is not a weapon, it is a shield, just like rights are shields. I'm just pointing out a problem that we will not have the solution with. I'm just saying that this weakness occurs. But hey, thank you for the invite. I got to get back to work.
And great
God
having
bless
you,
y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Bye, Steve.
By the way, don't give the wrong impression. Ian is also a practicing lawyer on the job. I think, Sean, you are too, correct?
Yes. We had a bunch of snow days this week, so
okay.
not like this week.
Even the pardon power could be used as a weapon because
Sure,
a president in theory could, let's say, do inside dealing, get money from foreign countries. In theory, get money from outside countries, use different people to help him with that.
Foreign countries too.
Use different people to help him with that, and then use that and aggressively engage in that and figure, don't worry, I'm giving you all pardons for anything that you do during this time. So you're all good to go. In that sense, it's that shield is being turned sort of into a personal sword to be able to aggressively go after whatever their personal interests are. But,
by the way, I guess Mark is texting me on the side because of our show today, and Ian, he's claiming CBS News is now claiming that the gun is a B&T.
Yeah, and I think they're wrong. Sorry.
That's like using a Ferrari to do a drive-by.
Okay, A, it's a really expensive gun. B, it's also, they have an unnamed source. They say a law enforcement official with, it's like, okay, how much actual knowledge do they have here? What I've seen is indication that they were trying to follow up on this because people on Twitter have been going on about it. But I don't see how it can be a B&T based on what you see in the video. It is completely inconsistent with the video.
Yes.
It makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. It would be absolutely metal if the guy used that, because that's like the perfect weapon, but I don't think
it would be so cool, but it isn't.
Yes.
I'm
disappointed by that. But
I think Elon earned the right for us to call it X. I'm just going to say instead of Twitter. and I don't like when you dead name X. Okay, I'm just gonna say.
Oh, Joe's gotten sensitive today. Thank you, thank you, Joe. Yeah,
I mean, if he wants me to
speaking of dead
participate in
naming,
this
there was the
rebrand,
U.S.
he can
Supreme Court
pay me.
case this week on transgender and youth.
Oh, how'd that work
In
out?
Tennessee, it was pretty interesting. So on the 4th, I believe, 2 days ago, there was a U.S. Supreme Court oral argument coming out of Tennessee on the issue of whether or not the state of Tennessee can effectively ban transgender treatment for minors. And so there was an oral argument at the Supreme Court, and it was pretty interesting. The argument about why they can't, well, it's actually a little bit more specific than that. The argument principally from the people who are trying to reinstate the law is that the lower court applied the wrong standard. The lower court applied basically rational basis review. And they're saying, well, the people who are taking it to the Supreme Court are saying that they should have applied intermediate scrutiny because they believe it's a sex-based regulation. And if it's sex-based regulation, then intermediate scrutiny would be typically the correct legal standard. And the idea would be that if a male wanted to get a treatment for the purpose of deepening his voice versus a female wanted to get a treatment for the deepening of the voice, assuming it was the same drug, then you would be preventing the girl from doing it because they're a girl and not a boy. And that's the idea. I think the argument is wrong because you're not discriminating on the basis that they both want to deepen their voice. You are at least ostensibly discriminating because you're recognizing one as a medical condition versus not being a medical condition. The fact that the boy has not gone through puberty, for example, is a medical condition that needs to be treated, whereas you are not treating a medical condition by giving the woman hormones that she otherwise would not naturally produce. So the idea there is that it's the treatment of medicine versus perhaps a cosmetic procedure.
Play this clip if this is the right one. I think it's the right one.
Okay, hang on.
This is a stupid person.
Is it what?
This is the Sotomayor is dumb. I don't care if anybody says good legal. She's mentally unintelligent. Listen to this.
Cannot eliminate the risk of detransitioners. So it becomes a pure exercise of weighing benefits versus risk. And the question of how many minors have to have their bodies irreparably harmed for unproven benefits is one that is best left.
I'm sorry, Counselor. Every medical treatment has a risk. Even taking aspirin. There is always going to be a percentage of the population under any medical treatment that's going to suffer a harm.
Yeah, that's
so the question in my mind is not do policymakers decide whether one person's life is more valuable than the millions of others who get relief from this treatment. The question is, can you stop one sex from the other?
One cannot eliminate the risk.
Percentage of the population.
First of all, appreciate the sound of her voice drives me crazy. It's slobbish, intellectual,
the NPR vibe.
No, it's like, and she thinks by talking slowly, it somehow makes it smart. Chopping a boob off, chopping a penis off is not a medical intervention that carries some risk. And the ultimate irony in this idiotic statement from her is that even aspirin has a risk. The reason why they took hydroxychloroquine off the market and ivermectin was because of the risks. There were two. Aspirin is more dangerous than ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, but somehow that's safe enough to like publicly administer. But the idea of double mastectomies and puberty blockers is a medical treatment that bears risks. It's mutilation, period.
Yeah, the argument also doesn't work because the balance of risk is essentially a policy argument at the end of the day. Like, could a state, in principle, ban aspirin?
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, they could, because there is some risk versus the benefit. And so then it just becomes a risk-benefit calculation, which is rational basis. And so now it's just up to the legislature to decide, is it worth it or not?
Yeah.
Well, I think banning aspirin maybe I think banning aspirin might be a bad example because you run up against the commerce clause too, with interstate commerce. But I do think about just regular medical treatments, because that was the bigger issue with abortion, right? Could a particular state ban abortion? So, but I think we talk about medical treatments. I think you can harmonize that to a state where aspirin is something that you.
I think I'm going to upset a lot of people with my thoughts about the attacks that Sotomayor has gotten over this particular argument. And I will remind you all that today, December 6th, the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not they want to take my case.
Okay.
But I will.
She's the wisest Latina.
She's looking. Sotomayor is very smart and looking awful young and wonderful these days.
Yeah. So I'll just throw that out there. But I will point this out as far as being intellectually honest here. Her point. A lot of people have mistaken her point. I think that if you want to give the benefit of the doubt to the argument she's trying to make. So you can say that she's not saying that there are millions of trans kids the way people are interpreting it. She's saying that if you're the logic of your argument would apply to a situation like aspirin, which affects millions of people. And I think a lot of people have taken this to say that, Sotomayor thinks that there are millions of trans kids out there. And that's if you actually think through what she's saying, that's not exactly what she's saying. No, I'm just being fair.
I didn't take it. What made it so painfully stupid is not that I didn't even hear it that way. What made it painfully stupid is her saying that puberty blockers have certain side effects like aspirin. The blocking of the puberty is not a side effect. It's the intended purpose of the drug. And so it's like, well, cutting off your arm has certain side effects like cutting off your arm. And so some people who cut off their arm are going to have their arm cut off. No, the whole point of puberty blockers is not the side effect is the purpose. And that's what they're talking about.
That's a great that you see, if you were arguing, that would be a great counterpoint.
Yeah. No. Some children have their puberties blocked and their dicks shriveled into nothing that can't ejaculate later on. No, that's the purpose of it. It's not a side effect. 1 in 100 are going to have it. Oh, yeah. 1 in 100. Yeah. If you give aspirin to a kid, they're going to have it. What's that disease called? The chat will know if you're not supposed to give aspirin to children. The potential risk of the proper functioning of the drug is one thing.
I think hemophilia because it makes your blood.
Reese disease.
No, it's not.
Reese's disease.
Yes, it's Reese's disease.
Reese's disease.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is not a side effect. It's the purpose.
That's the perfect count.
But there's so many angles here, though. You got society as sisters, where the parents have a constitutional right for the upbringing of their kids. So that's what I would be arguing if I was on one side, but then you have the other side where you have, you can't have a medical procedure just to cut your kid's arm off, right? Because you're the parent. So
you didn't get a tattoo, Nate.
Where does the state
not with a kid even under 16?
Right? Yeah, because the state does have some. So it's those two balances. But obviously, I think this gender transitioning before for children is ridiculous, and I think the state should.
And the fact that it impacts millions would be all the more reason for the state legislature to be potentially concerned.
To do it.
It's not like there haven't been popular or widely prescribed drugs in the past that have been taken off the market because we realized it was a bad idea. So the example doesn't quite work. And then of course and some of those drugs have been allowed back on the market because we realized it was a good idea for some limited circumstances. One drug that comes to mind that falls into this category is thalidomide. Thalidomide was originally prescribed very widely for morning sickness. We then realized that was a really bad idea because it led to rampant birth defects. Then much later, we realized, wait a second, thalidomide could actually be useful for the treatment of certain diseases. I believe HIV is one, if my memory serves correctly. And so then thalidomide went back on the market with the biggest black box warning of all time because of how dangerous it was. But these are risk calculations that have to be measured by people because, not all is well. And then, of course, other things were once available to the public, like heroin prescribed by our friends at Bayer, which was available over the counter at one point. And then we decided that was apparently a bad idea. So the fact that it impacts millions doesn't necessarily mean that it won't be banned later.
I mean, we could bring that back.
Eric's gone, huh?
Yeah, man. Well, now what are we
gonna
do?
Now we can say everything everyone wants to say about Eric.
I'm not gonna lie though. Watching the oral arguments, I thought it was very interesting when the ACLU attorney got up there and Clarence Thomas is like, basically, you really aren't offering any new arguments than what they've already presented.
That was great. Like first sentence out of the
it's like,
why are you here?
You're here just to say we had a Hecarino trans person arguing our trans case. Like that's really what, like, I that they allowed themselves to kind of be tokenized, like, oh, look, the first trans person argued a trans case. And it was like, and then what did they do immediately after that? They immediately crashed and burned.
I go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, now ultimately, guys, if you're out there, the oral arguments don't make or break your case, but if you end up like conceding half the field of your argument when you're giving oral arguments, it's never a good thing.
Yes, so the trans lawyer tried to claim an identity, but their identity has been exposed. They're really not much of a lawyer after all.
Yeah.
I think one of the fascinating things about the arguments for the people for the pro surgery piece is that I like the fact that they're arguing toward one judge, and that's because for the what's the case, the gay marriage case? Obergefell. Yeah. And if you notice, their arguments are for that justice, because they're saying this is about gender. This is it's not about being gay. It's about gender, because he specifically in that case upheld gay marriage.
Yes,
because he was like, it's just about gender. If it's it's I think a lesson for everybody that want to be lawyers out there to understand. You argue to your strengths, but you're arguing to particular justice. They know they're not going to get Thomas, but they believe they can get Gorsuch. Yeah. Because they can say, hey, you've already ruled like this before because of this reason.
Because of Bostock?
Yeah.
I also think
Bostock was the better case, and then for some reason, Ketanji Brown Jackson got hung up on Loving versus Virginia for a very long time.
Why did she bring that even up? That's like.
I mean, I kind of understand it's a civil rights case, but at one point and I'm paraphrasing, she said, "Okay, in Loving versus Virginia, they prevented people from getting married because of the basis of race, and in this case, you're preventing people from taking drugs who are minors because of their sex. What is the difference?"
Oh my god!
And I'm thinking to myself, you kind of answered your own question on that one a little bit.
That's so good. Oh my goodness.
But by the way, while we still have everybody here really quickly, I have an important public service message from Alec Baldwin that I'd like everyone to check out.
Oh, joy.
Hey, everybody. It's your friend Al. And I just want to tell you that everybody on this podcast is a real straight shooter. And when it comes to having the information, they're right on the mark every time. You should give them a subscription, because they were behind me the entire time through all of my drama. Lord knows they wouldn't stand in front of me.
Like John Hamm. That threw me off.
Speaking of bad podcasts and oral, has everyone heard what happened with Hawk Tuah Girl?
Oh,
yes.
Oh,
the
road
puller. We can't move on.
Is anyone
we can't
surprised,
move on.
though?
Someone else reminded me of
thing
one
is-
other thing. No, Justice Kagan at one point said to one of the lawyers, she said, "I'm not really interested in what legal box to put this in." And I lost that.
But here's the thing, though. I think at the end of the
what
day,
do you mean
though,
you're not interested in what legal box this belongs in? What are we even doing here?
Well, I think in this,
That's
because
funny.
Kagan's not the most. I think she's. People like to say.
No, it wasn't Sotomayor who said it, or even
that's
Jackson
what I mean.
who said it. It was
That's
Kagan who said it.
I know. That's why I'm saying. I know a lot of
Kagan.
people like to think Ketanji Brown Jackson's the dumbest one on the bench. I think it's Kagan at the end of the day.
I'm still
really?
impersonator.
I'm still grossed out that
I think
that uncivil went straight from Hawk Tuah to Kagan. That's
No, I just refused to allow to move on before I had to say.
I think she was trying to make the point of, well, there's are there public policy considerations, which the law is shaped by those too, that, are there public policy considerations?
That's
here?
for the legislature, not for the Supreme Court, for crying out loud. I am so sick of hearing the Supreme Court come out and say, it's our job to start saying the law. This is how you end up with retarded decisions like Roe v. Wade, and then people thinking, oh, this is the law. It's insane. Public policy, that's judicial activism. There's a reason we have separation of powers. There's a reason we have 3 different branches of government. And when it comes to public policy, it's not supposed to be decided by 9 unelected people who are serving lifetime terms, and they can basically set whatever policy it is. It's that we vote. We, the people, have a government by the people, for the people, of the people, that decide who is going to set our public policy through laws, not for some judge who gets appointed from on high, and often for intersectionality reasons, as we've seen Biden actually come out and state, and then come out and then start telling me that I'm deciding public policy. No, you have to know what box you're in, Elena Kagan, respectfully.
Well, hold on.
With the utmost respect.
Hold on, Joe.
That's the legal analysis which helps you frame whether this is strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, or rational basis. So how are you not? The whole reason you exist is to basically decide which box do we put this in. Does this categorize as something that's racist? Is it sexist? In which case, intermediate. That's what you have to decide in order to come to a conclusion here. Because your job is not supposed to be setting public policy. That's for the legislature. That we get to decide who's going to be setting that public policy. And don't start jumping over and start telling me that all of a sudden now you're some sort of elected leader who's supposed to be deciding how the entire country is thinking and operating, because that's what's going through your mind today on this particular issue.
Well, Joe, so some of the most fundamental pieces of jurisprudence are public policy based. Doctrine of unconscionability, for instance, that's purely based on public policy, right? We're not going to let these uneven contracts from people. So there are a lot of public policy concerns with the court, but I think your point is well taken, is that you have to limit it. You're talking about limiting that power to not become, but public policy, I think concerns for the court should matter in a limited sense. I do understand the overbreadth, but public policy does matter in some of these rulings.
That's in those circumstances with respect to unconscionability. That's because there's states have over and over again said that there's a public policy as far as fairness that's going on there. So you need to have that fairness. And if it's an unconscionable contract, in that case, you're lacking that fairness. But in that case, they're at least instituting the will of these different.
But you would agree that's a public policy, though? That's a public policy decision.
Because sometimes states legislatively enact an interest of public policy, not that all of a sudden now every issue now becomes a public policy thing. So I can agree with you that where legislature goes down that road, in that case, courts are now interpreting the legislature as far as that the legislature cares about public policy on this particular matter. So in those cases, yes, I agree with you, Nate. But as a general rule, to say public policy is supposed to influence decisions of the Supreme Court is just an asinine reading as to what their duties and role is.
All right, how about Haktua?
How about Haktua?
Let's talk Haktua.
Good.
Yeah, go do your Haktua
I don't know why
thing.
anyone's surprised that a meme coin based around an oral sex joke went down. Like,
No,
that is,
but-
But a big.
Ah! Oh!
I like mine better, Ian.
Well
I don't know
done.
why anyone's surprised.
Went down
that.
hard even.
No, Hakua got involved in a pump and dump. Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, pump and
They
dump.
did but this one, they were really, the way this coin was managed, though, this was like one of the worst pump and dumps ever. Like, they didn't do a good job at doing this. Like the Paul brothers, when they've done their pump and dumps and their scam crypto, like most of them are run halfway decently. This could lead to some, like the Commodities and Futures Trade Commission getting involved.
Keep in mind that one of the first places she appeared when she went viral was on Logan. Jake Paul or Logan Paul, one of the two. I think it was Logan.
I'm going to maybe take a potentially unpopular, or what is it called? A controversial opinion. I don't think I blame her one iota. I think she had no idea what the hell was going on. And listening to that, at least portions of that post, what is it when you
CoffeeZilla on Spaces?
Yeah, but CoffeeZilla is breaking it down, and I'm trying to. I'd love to get them on because they talk about words like rugging and sniping, and I have no idea what the hell they're saying. But I think she's not innocent. I think she's just totally has no idea what the hell was going on and has been thoroughly taken advantage.
But you know what? Hold on, though.
No, she had to know.
Whether she did or did not have to know, it's not a good look on a Twitter space when you have CoffeeZilla going after you, have somebody else arguing or white knighting for or whatever that person
you
was.
say I got to go to bed?
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go to bed now.
I'm listening to that, and I hear someone who she's just overwhelmed and has no idea what they're even saying, let alone how she was even taken advantage of.
Well,
Well, the thing is if she ends up, like, if she's sitting on $1 million after this, then she's not going to be looking like she was taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And if they bring this on securities issues, then she doesn't look, you know, you're going to tell a jury, oh, yeah, she was taken advantage of. She didn't know what she's doing. And here's the millions of dollars in her bank account. Like, nope.
Yeah,
bring a toothbrush.
Let's just be clear what happened, right? They put out these coins. They said, we're putting out these coins. They started selling them to people. Price goes up, and they sold out their coins, and the price crashes, and they've made all this money. So you're right. Maybe you could make the argument she didn't know, but then why would you sell at that high point?
Yeah, no. Well, no. If it turns out she in fact sold, then it's going to new facts will allow for culpability.
Well, it's not only selling; it's the 17% fees that
fees
they're
too, yeah.
collecting. They're very high. And he was saying, hey, you've collected over like $2 million in fees.
Oh yeah, they got 18 employees. It's not free to incorporate in the Cayman Islands to run a cryptocurrency scam. I mean, no, the bottom line is if she made out in any way, shape, or form, then yeah, it'll change the given here. But as now, it looks like the people who charged that 15% fee didn't have much to do with her. The insiders who were selling their selling their meme coins right after it launched, I'm not sure were her. But look, if she got taken advantage of, or if she was in on it, it'll come out sooner than later. And I'm not white knighting for her. Her podcast.
How about this for a counter? How about this for a
like
counter?
a
If you
white
invest in a
knight,
meme coin, you're too stupid to be protected by the law. How
Well,
about that?
The thing is, the law doesn't recognize that because
Yeah.
most frauds are
Like
like
this is
I
really
mean,
stupid. Let me invest
Yeah.
in Hawk coin. What are we even talking about?
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever dabbled in the over the counter markets, like penny stocks. It's you know that you're getting involved in everything's a pump and dump. You just hope to be on the right end of the pump and not on the dump. But no, like I think I don't think she understood this. Someone comes up and says we're going to launch it. It's going to be just like Jake Paul, and they take advantage of everything and they incorporate in the Cayman Islands. Like this person, I think she probably had no idea what the hell was going on, but she's done.
Can I just wait for one quick thought? If you want to get a look into her brain as to what she knew, one of the first questions that happens in this conversation invariably is, at what point am I allowed to sell out my stock? And those people who are allowed to sell out 10 seconds after it goes, and because frequently they'll force you to stay in for 30 days, at least 30 days, if not 3 months, 6 months, a year before you can sell off various percentages of your stock. If you're able to sell everything out 10 seconds after it opens, that sounds like it's a situation that is ripe for this type of pump and dump, and that you know it, and that you know, like, as soon as like day one, we're getting the hell out of here because we know that's the peak that this thing is ever going to be at. And that's indicative to me of a mens rea that you know that this is a pump and dump.
If Hawk Tua girl was able to figure that out, though, I'm just saying everyone else should be able to figure it out too.
Are there the problem that I see is this isn't exactly a stock. Like if this is a stock, they'd be in deep trouble probably because SEC and things. But what is there for crypto? What is there actually for crypto? It's kind of the Wild West, isn't it? I mean,
Great question.
That it is, but there's like Ripple was one of the big cryptocurrencies the SEC was screwing with for a while, and they basically they locked it up in so much turmoil, nothing helped it. And hold on a second here. Okay. So that kind of ruined things for Ripple, and then eventually, though, the Southern District of New York, the judge said this is not a commodity, so that's fine. But the SEC, they kind of took their hit there because I think they were scared if they went to the Second Circuit, and they agreed. Well, now they're screwed, and they really don't have any ability to bully cryptocurrencies going forward. So it's still kind of up in the air. There is no really clear thing there, but it's there's it's being traded as a commodity, and there's ways to regulate it through that. The biggest thing for Haley here with her Hawk Tua thing, though, is there were some things when they were advertising this. It was like, I want to get all the people who are like, it's the whole Hawk Tua crowd. Like, this is a way for you to get into crypto and learn. Like, this wasn't, when you're kind of selling.
Oh, you've learned a valuable lesson if you got into crypto with Hawk Tua.
Well, I agree. I understand that. But when you put this out there as kind of like the, when you're putting this out there as like a beginner mode thing, and then within a minute you lose $500 million of value because everybody jumped in a lifeboat.
How the hell did it have $500 million of value at any point in time?
It's because it's gambling. You're hoping you're there before. You're hoping you're finding a share before the music stops.
Yeah, so that rug gets pulled out.
Yeah.
Hawk Tua. Let's see what it's at here. Is this it? There's Hawk Tua. There's I'm looking on Coinbase. You got this. There's multiple Hawks.
Yeah. It's just HAWK.
No, but there's like 3 or 4. You got Hawk. There's Spit. You got one that's called FITT.
There are a lot of coins out there.
Yeah.
I see. If anybody lost money on this,
how is it that with Law Tube and Uncivil Law doesn't have a coin again at this point?
The Law Tube coin.
Because we understand
we could offer trading cards. Get the Uncivil Law trading card today.
I
We know what
disavow
jail
any,
looks like.
any real cryptocurrencies, and Clyde coin is merely a joke. There is no Clyde coin.
I can say the bigger
God.
problems other than this was that her podcast was just awful. It was it was almost satirically bad. Like you thought they were doing it that bad on purpose. Did she not just have on Mark Cuban?
Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
And he
Yes,
was
she
talking
did.
about holy cows. This is what happens when these idiots flee from Twitter and go into their blue sky echo chamber and they end up interviewing other idiots. It's a world of idiocy. It's idiocracy. But yeah, we'll see if she has actual culpability, knowledge of, because I don't understand how these things work. I just know not to get involved with them. But her administrators, they sounded culpable as hell when they were trying to explain how their 17% fee, and then they go after CoffeeZilla like, well, where do you make your money from? Bitch, it doesn't matter where I make my money from because I'm not the one on who just lost $500 million in value for millions of dollars in fees, and they admit to incorporating in the Cayman Islands and employing 18 people. It sounds like another FTX, but on a smaller scale.
And if you don't know
a
how
girl winds
crypto
up
works,
in jail, this will be hilarious.
Yeah. Hooked to
if you don't know how crypto works, I've got a simple metaphor for you. You don't need to understand how a blender works to know not to put your dick in it. And
Yeah, right.
Well, let's bring it back to Sotomayor.
Yeah, there we
One of
go.
the side effects of putting dicks in blenders is the blenders get dicked or the dicks get blended. Oh,
Hopefully this stays monetized.
Yeah. At least we're having fun. So whatever.
Launch a
God.
meme coin, Eric. It was a meme coin. It wasn't an NTF. I don't know what the difference is. If
These
there
are
is
the
one.
only coins that I trust in. It's the America's Untold Stories
Nice.
challenge coin. Has no value other than our goodwill and cool factor.
Well, let me show you what I got.
That's
You want to
what I
talk about
believe.
cool factor? I got this when I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is a $20
Ooh.
from the Confederate
States of America.
States of
All
these
right.
United States of America. Well, this is before.
Oh, that's nice.
It's cool. It cost
Oh yeah.
holy crap! It cost $90. But that's an authentic $20 bill.
I mean, I like
You know what's ironic, David, is at $90, it probably is still cheaper than that currency would have cost, or how much it would have taken to do the currency because of inflation at the end of the Civil War.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
but okay, well, you know what? It's about that time anyway to wrap things up. We left on a high note or a low note, depending on how you're looking at it. Kurt, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, so on my channel, we're going to be continuing to cover cases and Supreme Court cases in particular as they come up. We're going to hopefully be doing a dramatic rereading of the allocution of Sarah Boone, because I feel like that needs to be studied like the work of art that it is. And beyond that, we'll try to cover things as they pop up. So make sure to pop up on Civil Law, see what's happening.
Awesome. Nate, what's going on?
I got more Super Mayor coming down, and I think I'm doing a video on the me and Joe's argument, because me and Joe had the argument about we had the disagreement about whether when you're a convicted felon in New York, and it was fascinating because, well, I'll say this: Joe is committed. When he takes a position, he's committed. So I think we spent like almost an hour yesterday, and I'm sitting there literally like, he's like, "What does this mean?" I'm like, "All right, let's go to the definition section." Is it right here? He's like, "I don't believe the definition. Let's go here. Let's go here." So we walk, and it was so painful because we like, I'm walking up through every single little step, and then we get to the what. So and it was funny because Joe pushes the goalpost a little bit. So we got to the point where he pushed all the way back to, it's like, okay, it's Dissect and felony only. And I was like, all right, let's go to the case law. And the case law is so crazy about this. And one of the things that popped up was there was a guy in Texas who was convicted of all these child blank things. And Texas didn't sentence him. They said, we're going to postpone sentence for 10 years. So in other words, we're going to postpone sentence for 10 years. So he came to New York and was going to get a job as a teacher. And they were like, well, hey, listen, you have to register as a blank offender. So he was like, hey, I've never been convicted. I was found guilty. I pleaded guilty, but my sentencing is actually put off for 10 years. So I am not convicted. And New York came and said, even in that case, the fact that you were found guilty means you were convicted. So at that point, you have to then register in New York. So even if you're convicted anywhere else, they consider the guilty verdict everywhere across in New York is considered to be a conviction.
Why the hell would you delay a sentence of 10 years is the only question that should come out of that.
Yeah, well, they were saying if it's like it just happened in the YSL trial, and why the YSL, like he pleaded guilty, and they were like, well, if you do everything you're then we'll sentence you to time served, but if you mess up, then we'll sentence you to the 40 years. So they delayed the sentence to, it's like a probation thing. We're going to delay the sentence and see if you're a good boy, and then if you are, we'll sentence you to the lighter sentence.
And the crime that he was sentenced on or not sentenced on, he was then applying to be a teacher.
He would apply, he would apply like some soft job. But the interesting part of it, even about that, is that he was convicted in New York again for failing to register as a blank offender. So the fact he was on the way, it's a crazy story. But that's how crazy New York is. And I'll also say this: New York is one of the few places that does this, where the actual conviction, most places it's conviction and sentencing. That's when you become a convicted felon. New York is like one of the few places that doesn't. So it's a weird little quirk in the law, but that's what's coming up. So,
all right, Ian, in the calmer Canada, I guess. What do you have coming up?
Well, it was going to be a fairly calm thing. I had some. I'm going to be talking about Cody Wilson, who is involved in some litigation where he's basically decided to declare war on the Second Amendment.
Yes.
But I also now have had a little bit of a bomb dropped in my lap because the Trudeau government decided to ban another raft of guns. And so that's keeping me busy. I've got so many emails now. And yeah, it's kind of crazy because they're like, hey, we're banning a bunch of guns, but you can still like participate in your shooting sports. You can still do all these things. There's other guns we haven't banned. And so everybody who bought another gun to participate in their shooting sports is now, those have been banned. And all of this is just because Trudeau is doing terribly in the polls and he doesn't want to run an election on the economy or like housing or any of this. So he really wants to run it on like this 22 caliber rifle. Looks really scary. And the weirdest thing is that they're like, and we're going to take these guns and we're going to ship them to Ukraine so that they can use them in their war effort. And I really pity the poor Ukrainian soldier who gets shipped a GSG 16 22 caliber rifle and is like, I'm going to die. Like, you know, it's like.
And no, let me guess, no recompense for the owners that they take them away from?
Well, they've said that there's going to be, compensation. They just haven't figured out how much or how. But I actually just got an email because I've got a business license now. And they're like, hey, businesses, you can start turning these things in for compensation to be determined later. And I'm like, why would anybody turn anything in for compensation to be determined later? Yeah, this whole thing is going to be a massive clusterfuck, and I got to explain because I've got so many people with so many questions. So that's going to be a thing. So yeah,
I'm sure that'll help your economy up there a lot.
So this comes for anyone paying attention to Canada. It comes the week after Trudeau says we're basically going to figure out a way to unlock private rentals from Airbnb so that we can unlock the housing market. So they're nationalizing private property, prohibiting private use of private property, and overtly shipping them to Ukraine. You got to hear the Minister of Defense.
Whoever the hell the guy is. For that, David. I thought that was
called communism. Communism.
All right, Joe, if he's there. No, he's busy. All right, Sean, what do you have going on? Sean,
you're on mute.
Sorry. No, today, people told me we need to watch it. Going to do the Melody Ferris sentencing. Apparently apparently I was told if you think Sarah Boone's sentencing didn't go so
I'm
well,
looking at that Monday. It's crazy.
Melody's apparently going for the high score.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if my soul's prepared for that yet, though.
And then coming up, though, the DOJ released a report on the Fulton County Jail, which, holy cow, it's a very crazy report about all, okay, yes, it's a bad jail, corrupt and all that. It was so bad in this jail there were people living like in a, you're in your little potted area and there's like a concrete wall separating them. People were tunneling through the concrete walls and were able to set it up so nobody caught them. Tunnel through the walls just to go stab and attack people in the other pods. Like
which jail?
Fulton County Jail in Atlanta.
That's dedication to stabbing. Like
yes, but like they were attacking, like they were digging through walls. Like you think you're in jail and you're like, okay, well, I'm surrounded by like there's a concrete wall between me and these other guys, and you think the
not anymore.
At you, Shawshanking your way through it. No, they broke through it, and that's not even the craziest thing, and that happened multiple times. Apparently,
that is a lot of.
Can you imagine you're sitting there and there's a guy is trying to stab you, and he's having to you are watching this guy dig his way through over the course of like an hour. You're like, well, I'm getting stabbed in 4 or 5 hours.
You see him poke through. Digging. Yeah, there's like a little poke through, and then the poke gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah,
it's the world's slowest horror movie. Joe, what do you have coming up?
Next Friday, I'm supposed to be on Layback Law. It's
Awesome.
a show with this panel of different attorneys and things of that nature. And aside from that, I podcast. I still have not yet gone over the trans oral arguments. I plan on doing that this coming week and breaking that down and sharing with you my very calm thoughts about arguments made by various Supreme Court justices.
That's a good parallel. Trans oral arguments and Haktua in the same conversation. Interesting. All right. David, what do you have coming up?
This afternoon, 6:30, I've got Couey Griffin. He was the guy that was disqualified from office for insurrection, the test run for Donald Trump, who's still fighting his legal battle. So he's going to come on and talk about it. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, cool.
All right.
Daniel Pettit, did you guys hear the latest update?
Yeah.
Have they moved from the Allen charge to something else?
No, the judge sent it back saying that they have to determine not guilty on the first charge if they're going to move on to the second. So if the first charge hangs, the whole thing's
so people understand what's gotten the lower charge, the criminal negligent homicide. If you're not guilty of that, then there's no way you can be guilty of the negligent homicide, like the manslaughter, because the manslaughter, the lower charge, you have to be guilty of the lower charge to be guilty of the upper charge. So right now they can't agree. I don't know why it's even going on so long. Like how could this, even the mayors come out and say
there's a lot of political pressure, because I think it's when you walk out of the courtroom, you're surrounded by people yelling at you to hang them.
Well, I think that the jury's really, it sounds like they might be a little confused on like, can we go on to the next thing? I mean, that's not uncommon, because even though you spell things out in jury instructions, they don't always, they might still think another way. But Nate, how much, if he gets the criminally negligent homicide, how much time is he looking at?
Criminally negligent is 4, the manslaughter is 10. But the issue that the jury has, because there's really 2 issues that they got to resolve. Number one, the causation aspect. Was it the chokehold, or was it the fact that he had 10 times the amount of whatever the drug K9? He had like 10 times enough to kill an elephant. That's how much he had in the system. So the defense says it was the K2, but they say it's a chokehold. And then the second thing they got to overcome is the self-defense argument, whether he was then justified in using self-defense. So the prosecutor's saying that he employed deadly physical force, meaning it had to be immediate and all those things. And the defense is saying that it was just regular self-defense that kind of evolved into deadly physical force in doing the thing. So either way, it seems like he has 2 great appeal arguments going forward too. So we'll see. But I don't know how it's not going to be.
And the fact apparently he didn't die at the time, he didn't die until overnight.
Yeah. Apparently the guy had so much drugs in him that they're actually thinking of pressing charging Daniel Penny with transportation of illegal narcotics. Bada bing, bada boom. It's an effing joke. People in the chat saying, because there's women on the jury. If there's women on the jury, I would think that they would want someone to defend them when they're getting violently.
That's what I think. It's like how do these people not want someone to defend them?
But but what about because one of the big arguments was, this is an everyday thing on a train. You had two women, both minorities, get up there and say, we've been riding the subway for decades, 130 years, 125 years. And both of them said, we've never experienced something like this before as everyday riders. But but that's ignored because of skin color, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, and the one who called 911, it was a teenager that was on the train. That 911 call, you can tell that, and that's one of the people who testified, and they're, I think they're only 18, 19 now. You can hear in the phone call, because it got released to the New York Post. those people were terrified.
Hell yeah, they were terrified. You got this maniac. And on top of that, I love how the liberal media is talking about, well, he didn't attack anybody as of yet.
On that
it's just
train.
like it's like you don't have to attack somebody before I use self-defense. If you go and act like you're pulling out a gun and I have a gun, I can shoot you. It's the threat alone that gives you.
Well, assault doesn't necessarily mean contact. Battery does,
assault
right?
is battery. Yeah.
So he could have been assaulting the people.
He was assaulting the people. They say that he was lunging at them, he was assaulting them. But since their argument, since he didn't actually physically touch anybody
on that train, because he had a history of touching other women on other trains.
There was an active warrant out for that.
Yeah, and he pushed somebody into the tracks one time. So,
well, defense of others, from what I understand, self-defense from listening to Andrew Branco for a year means that it requires both an objective and subjective perspective of there being a potential lethal threat. If you're saying he used lethal force, so. If assuming he used lethal force, in that case, you need both the objective and subjective, which means that you have to perceive that that's what's happening, and it actually has to be happening.
That everyone in the car,
and everybody's saying
agreement with that.
Everybody in the car said it happened. That was happening.
I'm simply doing the lawyer thing.
It's a dead simple. It should be a dead simple defense of others case.
I 100% agree with you all.
I don't think they should have been charges at all.
Is disastrous for New York. I 100% agree with you. I think everyone here understands where my take is on that. I'm just pointing out the legal perspective, and also if you're on that train and you don't know that he has a history of doing that, that would not help your defense. Because if you don't know, you need to have the subjective knowledge. You know this is a guy who's.
No, I get that, but a raving lunatic, I don't need to pull up the criminal history for a raving lunatic.
Right? No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And like I said, the guy never should be charged. It's a whole political weaponization that basically you have a bunch of really, really loud, screaming people who are a very small minority of New York who are influencing the DA's decision to charge him in the first place.
I want to ask you guys, how do you guys feel about them literally giving full of blanket immunity to the other two people who are holding the arms and legs?
Racism.
And because they were so the other two people who are literally helping. So if you're talking the guy's being choked to death, the people who are holding his arms and legs are assisting in that choke.
Yes.
They are
I want the prosecutor federally charged for deprivation of civil rights for prosecuting someone because of their race.
That's all this is. That's all.
How about that? How about we break out a civil rights violation against the prosecutor and charge them federally? That'd be good.
And it's so I think people don't understand how bad it was. The guy who was holding his arm so he couldn't stop the guy from choking him, he ran. They had to go find that guy. He ran. They did, and they had to, and he got on the stand and said the reason why I didn't come forward because I thought they were going to charge me. And they said, well, so what happened? Oh, when I came in, and the prosecutor said, we'll give you full immunity because we want you to testify against the white guy. It's like, what more do you need to know?
Did he actually say the white guy? He actually said
not the white guy, but you know
Penny or whatever.
Yeah. So they gave him full immunity. But he walks in the door. We're giving you full immunity. Don't worry about it. I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah, I agree. This is the kind of case that you want to call Bragg to the stand and say, exactly, tell me why you're charging. I mean, I would love to see that. It's like, give me the justification for what you are doing here. But I don't know. On that note, folks, if you like this kind of discussion, which can go all over the place, like I said, in the scope of one show, from trans oral arguments to Hawk to you get it all here, and I hope to see you next Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern.
So it's really just oral